Welcome back to the Dear Katie podcast. This is Katie Koestner. I am the primary host of the Dear Katie podcast, and we are so delighted to have you take this journey with us on our weekly podcast episodes. I just want to remind everyone to do great self-care. Thriving is part of the purpose of this podcast, and we definitely want you to take a break at any time. Warm bath, fresh air, walk a dog, have a bite of chocolate, whatever you need to do good care for yourself. Just as a reintroduction, if you're not familiar with me, I am the woman who was on the cover of Time magazine at age 18 as the first in history to speak out nationally and publicly as the victim of date rape. And HBO made a film about me, and I went on to become the executive director of the Take Back the Night Foundation. We are the oldest, largest global movement on sexual violence in all forms for all people in the world. So we encourage you to visit our website for lots more information. So I'm going to turn it over to our hosts and our guests for today. Hi, everybody. This is Katie Koestner. Welcome back to the Dear Katie podcast. As I always start, please know that self-care is of paramount importance. And if any time during our episode you need to take a break, do good self-care. Definitely go breathe. I would say do a headstand, go for a walk, eat a piece of chocolate. If you're so compelled to use our hotline and get some legal support because we fire you up, definitely do that. And of course, there's tons of great options on the Take Back the Night website for all types of transformative healing and modalities for growing stronger. And today, I'm so pleased to welcome Edy Nathan. Edy, I'm just going to share a little bit about what I think we're going to talk about and some of Edy's background, and then we're just going to get right into it. So Edy is a certified clinical social worker and sex therapist. She helps people transform their lives by identifying tools to interrupt the silence and long-term effects of grief, trauma, sexual grief, and she's created her own methodology to do so. So she really is a visionary. She went to NYU and Fordham, and she believes in taking things one person at a time and one step at a time. So welcome, Edy. Thank you for coming to the podcast.
Thank you. It is such a pleasure to be here. Yeah.
So I always like to learn a little bit about how, not that growing up is the most important thing, but sometimes it has the longest impact on our lives. So tell us a little bit about how you grew up and when, where, whatever you want to share.
Okay. So I am a Midwest girl. I grew up in Chicago, and Chicago is a beautiful, beautiful place to grow up. It wasn't my town, though. And so I soon got out of Chicago and headed east, and New York became my home. And I love New York. I love everything about it. And, I used to tell this little story that, like, when I got to New York and I went to NYU, and I was like, oh, I'm so thrilled to be here. And I was walking through Central Park, and I was a creative. I was actually into theater and art. And I went to NYU for theater, and I was walking through Central Park, and I saw a guy talking to a bush, and I was like, oh, I have no desire to talk to this bush. And I thought, I'm in the right place. Nothing I do is going to be weird or outlandish, because there are people talking to bushes. And it kind of gave me permission to strive and to grow and to take chances and to be an outlier and to be a free thinker.
Oh my gosh, that's so beautiful, Edy. I love that. I love the talking to a bush. Now, and I also like going back one more step. So you said Chicago was not your town, New York was. How early in your life did you think, I've got this creative talent that must be set free? Were you like 3 years old?
Just about.
Yeah.
Just about. Yeah. It's a great question. And without, getting into too much detail, sometimes people are born, and I believe that we're all born knowing, right? We're all born knowing. And in that knowing, in a nanosecond who you are, or how things are going to be for you in the world. And what I got early on was I just wanted to bring everyone home that I met. And that included animals, I want you to know, okay? And I just saw the world through this lens of, let's help that homeless person. Let's feed this person. Let's go dance in the streets with the musicians. And little did I understand that was actually not the way the world worked. And my parents, they really were not thrilled, I must tell you, at the fact that I wanted to bring all these strays home with me. And they finally had to say, that's not what we're doing here. And so, but I was that child who hated babysitters and locked them out of the house.
Oh my gosh.
Okay. Yes. And I was that child who loved rainstorms and walking in the rain and jumping in puddles and getting wet and just enjoying all of that. And I was that child that would sneak out of the house because everybody in our neighborhood left their doors open in the summer. And I would go into these people's houses and I'd go onto their back porches and I'd go to sleep. And then the neighbor would call my house and say, do you know where your daughter is? And well, she's sleeping. No, she's here. So that was me.
That is a beautiful you, Edy. That's a gorgeous you. I think you're already inspiring everybody listening by, just your bouquet of delight. I already think you're, that I think there was a show where they had a whole bouquet of balloons, all colors, like down the chimney or something. You just already, although I put you more in a field of flowers.
I love it. Yeah. I'll take them.
No,
as long as they're wildflowers. Well, can we have wildflowers?
Oh, I love wildflowers. I'm such a flower person myself. I think they're gorgeous, and everyone is a perfect piece of art. That's how I see the world. A flower is so is a fern. I love ferns.
Yes.
I like lily pads.
Yes.
I kind of like all of nature, but that's where I was going to say, like, it's interesting because nature is a little harder to find amongst the 16th and like all the streets of New York. You know what?
It's true.
Park. You have to search out the park, but they do exist. Thank goodness.
They do.
But how did you juxtapose the creative freedom, or maybe, some people put nature over creative human arts, right? Nature, creative, human, like maybe Mother Nature.
Yes.
So how do you rank them? I know we're getting off on a little bit of a tangent, but I think it's curious because you are such a creative gift. So how do you think about the creative arts that are all around us in nature versus the ones that humans have created?
I don't know that I distinguish them.
How does that impact, who you are and what you do?
It means to me that there's information everywhere. And really what I mean by that, there's information, there are insights that can be gathered not only internally but externally. And sometimes when there are external observations, they're feeding something internally that maybe we didn't even know needed to be fed. And what I mean by that, I can give a perfect example. In my first book, It's Grief, The Dance of Self-Discovery Through Trauma and Loss. It's a book not just about the loss of a loved one, but really it's about the losses we have in our lives. And I was out walking in nature. I hadn't yet finished the final opening to the book. And I was in Florida. I'm walking around and I'm like, what is my opening going to be? What is my opening going to be? And it just wasn't coming to me. It was like a blank. And because I also trust in my environment, unless there's something that is causing my brain to communicate to my body that there's danger, I really trust that what I'm supposed to see and experience is there for a reason. And all of a sudden I stopped and there was this huge bird. I mean, it was massive. Okay. And it was standing like 300 feet away from me. And there was like this pond. And I'm like, holy camole, there's this big bird. I don't even know what kind of bird it is. And then it hops towards me. And I'm like, oh my gosh, it's hopping toward me. And then I say, okay, I'm going to take a step toward it. So I take a step toward it and then it hops again. And I'm like, oh my God, this is so exciting. I'm so thrilled. And then again, I move closer until I am so close and it is so close to me. And I realize something that I hadn't noticed. It only had one leg.
Oh my goodness.
Yes. And it was in that moment that I realized this is my opening, because here is what I learned. It was a sandhill crane, and that sandhill crane was thriving in nature only with one leg. And that when people are grieving, it feels as if something has been taken, like amputated from them, and that this was going to be my story.
Edy, I am already so, I will say snugged under the wing that you're providing. It's a glorious, your voice, everything you say. I'm kind of glad I know we were going to do this with video, but your voice and the power of it is just so glorious. Simply, Edy. Oh my gosh, I feel like I'm in an Oscar-winning, award-winning, you just have such a way of speaking. It's like poetry out of your mouth in every which way. I love how descriptive you are. And I appreciate it because like now it's actually better that we don't have the video, because I think your ability to craft words into pictures in our mind's eye is just so perfectly wonderful. So I think everything is meant to be in life, and that's why this had to happen the way it did.
I guess so, right? Yeah. Yeah.
So glorious. Okay. So actually let's turn a corner. Like we're walking down the street now.
Okay.
In New York.
Uh-huh.
I feel like we just walked past and through the park a little bit.
Yeah.
Yeah. And now let's talk a little bit about what you're doing with grief and trauma and how you got to that place. Because we took a big jump from Chicago to New York.
We did.
And then, let's give the interstitial space there. Like what happened in the intermediate. When you got to New York, what was going on for you?
Everything. I was at my dream school, NYU. I couldn't believe that I got in, and I got in because of an audition, not because of my grades, because as a survivalist, and that's what I call sexually traumatic survivalists or survivalists, the idea that I could have this dream and I could be in New York and I could be in an acting program that was second to none was just amazing. And
that was your major then, Edy? It was
my major. Actually, I had a dual major. It was theater and sociology. And then I went, and then there was a little bit of time and space, and I auditioned, and I was in small theaters off Broadway and did a lot of work. And then at 23, I came down with what I laughingly, sadly call a bad case of agoraphobia. And at 23, I literally could not walk down the one flight.
My goodness. What do you think, when you go back, what do you think was going on for you?
So, we were talking about nature and the creativity of nature, bringing nature and bringing in one's own creativity. And probably at that point in time, I was also living a pretty wild life. And what ultimately, looking back, the agoraphobia was a gift.
Let's say, like, just for a second, because I just was my last guest. We were talking about addictions, wildlife. She used the same phrase. So if our listeners are following along in episodes, we just had another wildlife on the show, and she was a wild woman. She was like, it was sex, drugs, and more men, and rock and roll, and more drugs, and more alcohol. Like, she was like, I'm all into everything. So what was your wildlife in a nutshell?
In a nutshell, without so much of the drugs, it was certainly dating and staying and clubbing and being out until 4 o'clock in the morning and burning the candle at both ends and
Oh my goodness.
dating crazy people and experimenting sexually and just
Love.
saying the world is my oyster.
Or I'm going to go open all the oysters and find the pearl.
That's right. That's right.
Yeah, I love that. I like it saying that better. The world was many oysters. I'll go find the one until I find a pearl or two.
That's right. That's right. But the pearl found me, and the pearl came in the form really of becoming agoraphobic. And the phobias made me land. They sobered me. The sobriety and the movement of the sobriety actually allowed my brain to begin to recalibrate and to begin a process of, okay, if I'm not going to be in the theater, who am I and what am I going to do? And thankfully, a wonderful woman who owned a pottery studio 3 blocks from my house became one of my saviors. And I knew I could walk 3 blocks. All I had to do was walk 3 blocks. And this kind woman allowed me to go into the studio. She taught me how to throw pottery. And she said, you are not allowed to save anything for a year. I want you to cut every piece you make in half. And I want you to look at the walls, which became a metaphor for looking at my own interior, my own walls, the thickness or the thinness of my voice, of my being. And I ended up becoming a master potter and going back to school and majoring in drama therapy and sociology for a master's degree. And I got another master's in social work. And that then led me into social worker, trauma therapist, grief therapist, because I lost my partner when I was 27 and there was nowhere to go and no one to talk to. And I said, I need to learn about grief so that I can help myself and I can help others.
Oh my gosh, Edy, that's so beautiful. I'm so sorry about the loss as well, but it must have thrust you into a different space.
It did. That, along with the phobias, thrust me into a completely different headspace. And my partner's name was Paul. And Paul and I were just 2 peas in a pod. And he taught me about love. And he taught me what it is to receive love and to be in love and to be in your beingness with love.
Can you explain that in more detail?
Yeah, I can.
Yeah, that was so gorgeous. What does it mean exactly to you?
So the beingness of love, we say we love another, but how much do we devote to loving ourselves and to saying, I'm going to take what I now have coined as time in moments as opposed to time out moments. And those time in moments are moments to take time in for the self. And what Paul taught me was those time in moments to be with the self and to be with my body and to be with my soul and to be with my psyche and to be curious about what I'm thinking and why I'm thinking it and to give myself the time to love me so that I could actually love another.
My gosh, that's a glorious journey right there. My goodness, that was perfect.
Yeah.
And did it all, and so, but you were able to carry on at you said only 27? You were only 27?
I was 27 when he died. We'd only been together for 2 years. And what I can tell you is that there's certainly been a huge evolutionary process, because going into the world of grief, in my innocence, I thought, I'm just going to be working with and talking with people who've lost loved ones. But it became so much bigger, as so often these life changes become, right? And
Right.
it became bigger because people were coming in not only with the loss of a loved one and dealing with the loss of a loved one, they were coming in with the losses of the self, and they were coming in with traumatic imprints that had affected their beings, and they were lost within themselves, and they were in incredible pain. And the loss of a loved one was actually bringing up memories of abuse, memories of predatory events that they hadn't remembered, or developmental experiences where they had been hurt and hadn't realized that those hurts were actually impacting their ability to mourn, to grieve, and to dance with their grief.
Well, what does that mean, dance with their grief? Let's talk about that. That was
So,
a using
yeah,
phrase.
yes. Yeah. Oh, so, too often we use a vernacular that says you're getting over your grief. You're getting over it. You're getting over it. And that's a lie, period. I have not gotten over my grief with Paul or my parents, and I don't want to get over it, but I want to learn to partner with it so that I can live my life. I can honor them, and I can honor their how they taught me, what they taught me, and who I am as a result of those losses. And the dance is the partnership rather than the denying or the putting away or the belief that it just goes away.
Yeah, that's important. I think it never fades. And I think it's different, even different than well, let me ask you this, Edy. How would you compare trauma and grief to scars on our body, or on our physical skin? Like what?
So it's really interesting that you asked that question. It's a great question because what I talk about in this new book that has a working title, and it's on the sexual grief effect, which is a brand new term. I talk about the traumatic imprint is like a slap mark, and the slap mark doesn't leave. You know it's there, and it is a reminder of what happened. Even though it's not active, it can be activating.
Activating is so important, Edy.
Yeah.
Well, let's talk about the book. Let's talk about where like our listeners are often survivors. They're trying to support survivors. So how you even created your own methodology.
I did.
What does that look like? Yeah.
I'm sorry.
I have a good idea. Pretend you were actually giving a mini lecture to our listeners who are either in high trauma or coming out of or navigating it.
Okay. So at the beginning of the show, you asked everybody to take care of themselves. And one of the things that I always want people to do is take care of themselves. So as I go into this explanation, if at any time you're feeling your own arousal or agitation, just put your forefinger on top of your thumb, close your eyes, and try to feel your fingerprint, because that is actually a very relaxing, centering exercise. And you can do it at any time of day or night and just breathe. So what I'm talking about is the sexual grief effect. And the sexual grief effect is a natural response, okay? So it's natural to anyone who's gone through a predatory event. And you know what predatory is for you. I don't have to explain it, but it is a sexually traumatic predatory event or a sexually traumatic developmental experience. And in our lives, we have all these developmental experiences from birth until we die. And those developmental experiences can have an impact on how we live in the world. And the sexual grief effect is really about how one's life force has been taken away from them because of either that predatory event or that developmental experience. And when it's taken away from you, it's imprisoning. And it can make you feel as if you're, and I'm going to use a word that's a really hard word, it can make you feel as if you're held hostage. And my clients really relate to that word because it's like you're trapped. And what I do within the sexual grief effect is I help you navigate along with the hostage taker sexual grief by becoming your own navigator, hostage negotiation navigator, by teaching you 6 specific strategies that empower you to face off on this incredible trajectory of the sexual grief effect that imprisons you. And by being curious, which is the first stage of it, it's that first step. It is, number one, recognizing that something has gone on, or if you haven't recognized it, being curious about how has my life force been taken from me as a result of a predatory event or a developmental experience. And those developmental experiences can be unwanted at birth, or period poverty, or erectile dysfunction, or aging, menopause, disability, or even religious sexual trauma. So that developmental timeline is really intense, but usually it's part of one's development, and there's something that happens and it changes you forever. And in a predatory event, something has happened to you by another that was not your choice. And it changes you. And the goal of becoming the warrior here is to face off the hostage taker. And by becoming your own negotiator, you find your voice, you get in touch with your own empathy and compassion, you move out of loathing and disgust and into liberation. And the liberation, the beauty of the liberation is learning these 6 strategies. Knowing the self, having compassion. Compassion is so hard. And then developing rapport. I'm developing that rapport with myself, which is what I was actually talking about with Paul, like the beingness with the self. And you're developing a rapport and a steadiness. So those are 3, and those are pretty loaded.
Edy, that was huge. Like, you just gave so much. I'm going to come at you with some of the queries that we get from many of our listeners, and then we can always continue the conversation if we run out of time in the next 8 minutes. But I think we probably should, because my goodness, you're so generous. So let's just rest on what you said and make sure we close the gap on everything you just went over.
Absolutely.
Yeah, you went over so much, and I want to make sure our listeners can kind of chunk it out, all the things you said.
Okay.
So if I'm pretending right now, Edy, to be one of our listeners and saying, like, wow, Edy, that sounds glorious, but it doesn't sound accessible to me, and I'll say because. Let's do a couple.
Just so you know, I can't hear you.
One is,
you just broke up.
Yeah. Oh, sorry. Here's because number 1. Because number 1 might be, I can't take the time to do that kind of work because I'm in school. I have a job. I don't have the time. And second one might be, I live in too much self-blame and I don't know how to escape it.
Mm-hmm. Okay.
Yeah. What do you think about either of those? Like, how can we help our listeners who are feeling those things?
Absolutely. So how do you help? I don't have time.
Mm-hmm.
the time piece is a true experience. And if you don't have time, that already lets me know that you are very, very busy. And you're so busy that you may not even have time to breathe. And so the first thing that I'd love for you to do as you're walking to school or driving, instead of putting on, a podcast in that moment, is as you're driving or taking the train, just start to be aware of how your body feels, how your breathing feels, and just be curious about that. Be aware that if you're rushing somewhere, are you always rushing somewhere? And you may not have the time to say, I'm going to be curious, but there are moments in the day that just being with the self will actually allow the other tasks you have at hand seem a little bit easier. And isn't that what you want? Just things to be a little bit easier.
That's perfect, Edy. I love that solution. What about the second one?
Sure. So that self-blame is often correlated to shame and loathing and disgust. And that's when the first thing you're going to do is say, okay, yeah, blame, you're here and you're right next to me. And I feel you all of the time. And I hear your messaging all of the time. And I'm going to write one of your messages down. And I'm going to write it actually on a piece of paper. And I'm going to look at it. And I'm going to think about how, if this were a child I was speaking to, and that child was saying those things about themselves, how might I want to speak to that child to help change their perspective in that moment? And how can I show some love toward the blame, toward the loathing, toward the disgust? And how can I say, it's okay for right now, little one. You can always go back to the blame, but let's see what you could imagine for a life without it, or where it's a little quieter.
That's so beautiful, Edy. My goodness. Thank you.
Thank you.
I feel like we're all growing more thoughtfulness and ways that we can navigate all that we're doing. And I'm definitely thinking we'll have to continue this conversation a little bit longer, Edy. So let's do this for the next 7 minutes.
Okay.
Or 5 minutes. Let's do 5 minutes. And then I'm going to give you we'll figure out the next step. But let's do one to not let our listeners, like, if this is the end of part 1.
Okay.
Yeah. You're writing the book. Let's give them, what's the cliffhanger? You're writing this all down into a narrative, and you also do this one-on-one. What are you doing to transmit all of this knowledge?
So what I'm doing to transmit all of this knowledge is I offer free webinars every couple of months. The last webinar that I did was actually a few weeks ago, and it was called Getting to Love.
Oh.
Mm-hmm. And the idea that when you've had a sexually traumatic event or experience, it's really hard to get to love. And that they can find me, and they can, get a recording of it, especially if when they come to my website and they say, hey, I listened to you on Dear Katie. And I understand I can get a free gift, and the gift will be the free recording that was free for everyone. I just want you to know, okay? So they will get that. And the other piece is I write on Psychology Today, and I write on Substack, and I'm always in conversation around this on podcasts like yours. And the other way that I'm doing this is a monthly conversation that I'm offering to people, and if they want to do a deeper dive. My one-on-one is a very small practice at this point because I'm really wanting to get this message out to the world because people are hungry for this message. And I'm learning more and more that it is through conversation and letting people see themselves through a different lens, and that's what this is, that there is the opportunity for growth, for change, and for them to realize that they can fly with their own wings, and they can dance with their imprints, but it doesn't have to rule them anymore.
Thanks so much, Edy. And I know time is short, and I apologize. My internet is not great tonight or today. And I will promise our listeners this is only part one, and I will regroup quickly with Edy and also think about how we can start to make her really brilliant therapies, modalities, thought processes available to all of you. So, Edy, Thank you.
Thank you. I know you. Thank you so much. It was such an honor. So thank you.
You are an honor. And right back to you. So I will reach back after we finish this recording. But for our listeners, please know this is seriously, Edy is a godsend. And I think Edy resonates with many of our listeners. So for our listeners, please know this is not the last conversation with Edy. We will definitely bring her back. So continue self-care, continue to be strong, and continue to navigate all those winding pathways to find your own strong self. Thank you, and take care. Thank you again, everybody, for joining another episode of the Dear Katie podcast. I hope very much you found today's episode helpful, empowering, and a way to take another step in that long journey toward healing and supporting those we care about, learning about sexual violence prevention, and also survivor support. For those of you who don't know, again, the Take Back the Night website has tons of great resources, books, self-care options, cool merch. If you're feeling like you need a wearable, we have great t-shirts. Of course, we would love it if you follow along on our free newsletter with news and events going on around the country and even around the globe. And finally, don't forget to like us and follow us on Facebook and Instagram. You'll find our entire community popping up here and there, and recaps of our podcast episodes as well. So together we shatter the silence, and together we end the violence. Take care.